Prince William and Prince Harry have finally reunited, but what should have been a healing moment took a shocking turn. William's bold words about King Charles left everyone speechless. Was it a hidden truth, a royal warning, or something even deeper? One thing's clear: this reunion changed everything we thought we knew. The silent return, a secret meeting revealed. On October 1st, 2025, a single leaked press advisory changed everything. It wasn't official. It wasn't broadcast by the palace, but it was real and explosive. A line buried in the royal diary read, "Private family gathering scheduled at Sandringham Estate, 11 a.m. No titles, no names, just enough to spark whispers. But within hours, those whispers grew into headlines. For the first time in nearly 4 years, Prince William and Prince Harry were going to be in the same room, face to face. The location? A private chapel on the Sandringham Estate. Not a public cathedral, not a televised memorial. This was a sacred family space. The same place where the Spencer family had quietly honored Princess Diana in the years following her death. No press, no aides beyond the essentials, no cameras, not even the royal photographer. And that silence was intentional. The only people allowed inside were those with a direct, personal connection to Diana. This wasn't about royal protocol or image. This wasn't about Charles, Camilla, or the crown. This was about her. Behind the walls of that chapel, the emotional weight was impossible to ignore. Years of bitterness, betrayal, and distance had led to this moment. Not a reunion for headlines, but for something deeper. The one shared loss neither brother had ever truly healed from. Royal aides had been preparing for weeks. The guest list was trimmed, communication between both sides handled through third-party lawyers to avoid direct confrontation. But the real message was clear. Let them speak. No interference. Insiders described the atmosphere as quiet and electric, the kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but trembles. This wasn't a reconciliation, one palace insider said later. It was a test of whether two brothers could even look each other in the eye again. Outside the estate gates, the world held its breath. Live streams ran with nothing to show but satellite maps and speculation. And yet, millions tuned in, hoping to catch even the briefest signal that something had shifted. At 11:08 a.m., the chapel doors opened, and history began to unfold. First contact, footsteps, and no words. Prince William walked in first, alone, except for one senior aide. His face was set, serious. He took his place near the center of the small chapel and remained standing. 2 minutes later, Prince Harry entered. There was no applause, no announcement, just footsteps and the sound of the chapel's wooden door creaking closed. They saw each other. No hug, no handshake, but, crucially, no one turned away. The first glance said more than any words ever could, a witness later said. They didn't look angry. They looked tired, worn down by everything they never got to say. For a brief moment, they stood in silence. Then William gave a single nod, formal yet deeply personal. Harry returned it. And that, in itself, was historic. Because this wasn't just two royal brothers in a room, it was two sons. Sons of a woman who had become larger than life and whose absence had shaped their paths in opposite directions. Over the past 4 years, the distance between them had only grown. Explosive interviews, memoirs, public silence, private rage. There were those who said they'd never reconcile, that Meghan, the media, and the monarchy had carved a permanent line between them. But now, in that chapel, with no cameras, no press teams, and no scripted lines, it was just William, Harry, and Diana. There were no formal introductions, no moderators, just empty pews and shared history. What had begun in grief 28 years ago was now circling back, not with resolution, but with reckoning. Outside, the media speculated. Inside, the room was thick with years of pain, silence, and unspoken memory. Every breath was measured. Every word would count. And when William finally spoke, no one, not even Harry, expected the name that would come out first. Not Charles, not the crown, Diana. Diana breaks the ice. William's tribute shocks the room. On a crisp October morning, inside the quiet chapel at Sandringham, tension sat like fog between William and Harry. Years of silence, scandal, and pain filled the space. But then William stepped forward. His voice didn't carry the weight of a prince, but of a son. He began not with blame, not with politics, but with her, Princess Diana. He quoted her softly, "Love is the only legacy worth leaving." The words hung in the air. Everyone froze. Even Harry, arms crossed, eyes wary, began to soften. William recalled a moment from 1993, a cold afternoon, visiting a homeless shelter with their mother. He described how she didn't flinch at the smell or hesitate to hug a man in tears. "That day," William said, "was the first time I understood what royalty was meant to do. She didn't wear a crown. She wore empathy." He then turned toward Harry and said, "She was always the light between us." And I forgot that for too long. There was no mention of Charles, no criticism of the past, just Diana's memory filling the room like a force of nature. It wasn't a peace treaty, but it was the first breath of something new. The confession. William finally admits his silence. Before Harry could respond, William continued, but his voice changed. It lowered, trembling slightly, no longer the rehearsed calm of a future king, but the raw voice of a man stripped of duty, speaking as a brother. "I protected the wrong people," he said slowly. "Not because I didn't care, but because I thought that's what was expected of me." The room fell into stillness. The air was heavy, not just with emotion, but with truth finally spoken. For the first time in years, William didn't speak for the institution. He spoke for himself. He described the year 2019, the moment everything almost changed. The year Meghan and Harry stepped back, when headlines were turning brutal, and tension inside the palace was suffocating. William revealed that he came inches away from calling Harry, from putting an end to the silence between them. "I told myself it would break Dad if we fractured any further. So instead, I let the silence break us." His words echoed in the chapel, landing with a weight even Harry hadn't expected. And then came the moment no one saw coming, a chilling confession. "You never knew this," William said, eyes distant, voice fragile. "But the night before her funeral, I heard her voice." He paused. Harry blinked, startled, but William didn't waver. "I thought I was dreaming. But I've never forgotten what I felt. It wasn't words. It was presence, like she was telling me something. I've carried that moment in silence for 27 years." He didn't elaborate further. He didn't need to. The look on Harry's face changed. The distance, the guarded eyes, the bitterness melted for a moment. They weren't adversaries. They weren't heirs and outcasts. They were two boys, sons of the same woman, standing in the long shadow of her memory. "I stayed quiet for the crown," William said, his voice now steady. "But silence cost me my brother. And her." He looked directly at Harry, and in that stare was every missed call, every public statement crafted by advisors, every chance never taken. But also, finally, a bridge. It wasn't just a confession, it was a reckoning. In that single moment, years of tension cracked open. Because sometimes, the only thing heavier than grief is the truth we carry alone. Harry's turn, calm words, unspoken pain. The room had gone still after William's confession. The prince, who had always been composed, reserved, and stoic, had just peeled back layers of silence that had weighed on them both for years. Harry stood up, not defiantly, but slowly, like the weight of what had just been said needed time to settle. His eyes were red, but dry. His voice, when it came, was steady. "Thank you," he said. "That took something. I didn't expect it, but I heard it." He didn't raise his voice. There was no anger, no confrontation, just truth. Harry admitted that there were many times he felt unheard by the family, not just in the press, but in the quiet halls of the palace. "But I never felt unloved by you," he added, turning slightly toward William. He recalled a memory, one only brothers could understand, a stormy night at Balmoral when they were children. Diana had come into his room after a thunderclap woke him. She sat on the edge of the bed, held his hand, and told him, "I'll always be right here." Harry's voice cracked at that moment, but he didn't stop. That moment, her hand, that comfort, I've carried it every day. Even when I left, even when I was angry, especially then. He then looked directly at William. "The press, the drama, the noise, none of it matters. Not today, because today she's here again. You brought her into this room, and for the first time in years, I felt her." The air shifted. Tension didn't vanish, but the ice cracked beneath it. Years of tabloid battles, Netflix documentaries, and royal silence had melted away, not in forgiveness, but in shared grief. Harry finished with one line that caught everyone off guard. "You remembered who she was, Will. And in doing that, you remembered who we were." It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was the first step, spoken not as an attack or a plea for pity, but as an honest reflection of pain. Pain both men had felt in different ways, and for the first time in years, together. Diana's shadow, a mission reclaimed. As the chapel's quiet resumed, William took a long breath, the kind you take when something deep shifts inside you. He looked over at Harry and said something no one expected to hear from the man known for staying the course. "She didn't wear the crown. She wore the people's trust." That line hit hard. William wasn't just remembering Diana, he was recentering her. He spoke of Diana's 1987 visit to an AIDS clinic, where she shook hands with patients without gloves. "That was before the world understood," he said, "and she didn't care. She just led with her heart." Then, he referenced her 1997 landmine walk in Angola, calling it the moment he realized that impact didn't need a title, it needed courage. William admitted that for years he'd walked a different path from Harry, not out of anger, but out of fear. Fear of headlines, fear of breaking royal protocol, fear of being seen as disloyal to the crown. "But what I feared more," he added, "was losing who we were." He finally acknowledged what many suspected. that the brothers had both inherited their mother's mission, just taken different roads to fulfill it. Harry nodded, not in agreement, but in understanding. Then, for the first time, both brothers sat side by side. No one spoke. They just looked at the photo of Diana placed quietly on a small easel near the altar. A black and white portrait taken months before her death, full of life, mystery, and fierce compassion. William turned slightly to Harry and said, "We lost her together. Maybe it's time we carry her forward the same way." It wasn't a public pledge. There were no royal photographers, no ceremonial words. But something had shifted. The chapel wasn't just a place of reunion. It had become a mission statement, spoken not for press, but for purpose. The battle wasn't against each other. It never had been. It was against a grief that had gone unspoken for too long, and a legacy that still had more to give. Diana's shadow didn't divide them anymore. It finally brought them back into the same light. The father in the middle. William breaks the code. As the atmosphere softened, another truth pressed against the silence, one they had both avoided for years. William turned toward Harry again, this time more hesitant. His words came slower, more carefully chosen. "There's something I've never said. Not to anyone, not even Kate." Harry looked up. William continued, voice quiet. "I stayed quiet all these years, not just for the crown, but for Dad." The room shifted. This wasn't a criticism. It was confession. One only a son could make. He admitted that their father, King Charles, had always been a figure pulled between roles: monarch, widower, husband, and father. And William, as the elder son and heir, had felt a duty to protect him, even when it meant suppressing his own pain. "I feared breaking Dad," he said, "but in doing so, I broke us instead." It was the first time William publicly acknowledged the emotional debt he owed to both his parents. A man raised by two people who had once loved each other, then hurt each other, then split apart under the harshest public gaze imaginable. He spoke about 1997, about waking up to the news of Diana's death, and seeing Charles, shaken, human, and terrified. "He was broken too," William admitted, "and I thought, if I show pain, it will shatter what's left of him." That belief, he now said, defined his silence. It was why he hadn't reached out to Harry in 2020. Why he hadn't responded when the Sussex bombshell interviews aired. Why he always stood firm while others fell away. But now, in this chapel, surrounded by memory, legacy, and grief, he saw that silence had cost them everything. Harry didn't interrupt. He simply nodded. There were no excuses offered, no apologies demanded, just an unspoken agreement that their father was both part of the pain and a man still carrying his own scars. In that moment, the brothers weren't just Diana's sons anymore. They were Charles's sons too, reconciling not just with each other, but with the complicated man at the center of it all. And that shift, that single line, "I feared breaking Dad," reframed the entire royal narrative. This wasn't just about a rift, it was about a family caught in a storm of duty, trauma, and love. A family still learning how to be human in a world that demanded royalty. Media earthquake. Public sentiment erupts. What began as a secret, off-the-record reunion couldn't stay hidden for long. By 2:35 p.m. on October 1st, 2025, the British press broke the silence. An anonymous palace source had leaked word of the Sandringham meeting, and the world exploded. Brothers reunite for Diana, read the BBC headline. The Daily Mail plastered side-by-side images of William and Harry at Diana's 1997 funeral, and then at the chapel in 2025. Social media ignited. Hashtags like #DianaBridge, #RoyalReunion, and #WindsorBrothers were trending globally within an hour. A single image, a blurry shot of William and Harry leaving the chapel, shoulders aligned, racked up 4.2 million likes in 12 hours on Instagram. TikTok exploded with montages of Diana's life, layered over voiceovers of William's tribute. Royal favorability polls surged overnight, plus 67% in the UK, plus 73% in the US. Even Australia, long disenchanted with the monarchy, showed a renewed interest. But as public warmth grew, panic erupted behind palace walls. The firm, that invisible machine of monarchy, wasn't ready. A prepared narrative didn't exist for the brothers reunite. No press team had talking points. No statement had been drafted. One source described it as emotional anarchy. Inside Clarence House, Camilla's staff held a closed-door meeting to decide whether she should comment. She declined. Instead, Queen Camilla's office issued a brief, chilly line. Her Majesty remains committed to continuity. Meanwhile, King Charles had reportedly watched the meeting via private video link. Sources close to the family described him as visibly moved, but also deeply unsettled, caught between relief and fear. Because while the public rejoiced, palace strategists saw something else. A narrative spiraling out of their control. And then, it got worse. A private remark from William, reportedly made to a close aide, was leaked online. "The future doesn't belong to silence anymore." That line trended within minutes. The palace tried to deny it, but screenshots had already gone viral. This wasn't just a family moment anymore. This was a media revolution. The monarchy was being redefined in real time, not by strategy, but by emotion. William and Harry had taken control of the narrative, not through press releases, but through grief, honesty, and love. And once the world saw that, there was no going back. The palace's cold response: support or suppression. As the world responded with warmth, nostalgia, and tears, the palace responded with ice. Within 24 hours of the reunion, an official statement was released from Buckingham Palace. Its tone was cautious, almost robotic. The household supports all efforts to strengthen family unity. No names, no acknowledgement of emotion, no mention of Diana. Insiders described the reaction as surgical damage control, not to mend a family, but to contain a narrative. What William and Harry had shared in private was now very public, and the institution wasn't ready to follow their lead. Queen Camilla's office issued a separate line: Her Majesty remains committed to continuity. That word, continuity, became the red flag. It told the press exactly what they needed to know. The monarchy wasn't celebrating this reunion. It was bracing against it. Behind palace doors, King Charles was said to be deeply conflicted. He had watched the brothers from afar via a private live feed, reportedly at his own request. Witnesses described him as visibly emotional, even teary-eyed during William's speech. But when asked if he'd reach out, he said only, "They needed that moment. Without me." Yet others inside the royal inner circle saw the moment differently. Some advisors feared that William's vulnerability would weaken the crown. Others believed it would humanize it. But the most troubling development was the internal split it exposed. Senior aides aligned with Charles and Camilla reportedly urged silence, caution, and restraint. Meanwhile, Younger staff close to William began leaking small details to trusted journalists. Quotes, moments, facial expressions, subtly shaping the narrative. It was a power struggle in real time, not over a throne, but over how a family tells its story. And then came the silencing attempt. One of William's private remarks, "The future doesn't belong to silence anymore," was pulled from press access minutes after going live. The palace's press office denied it had been said. But by then, the clip had been viewed over 18 million times. The monarchy's grip on the story had slipped. This wasn't a photo op or PR stunt. It was two brothers daring to grieve aloud, to question legacies, to name the shadows. And the palace had no playbook for that. Diana's legacy rises again. In the days that followed, the echo of Diana was everywhere. On October 4th, Prince William made a surprise visit to Centrepoint, the homeless charity his mother once championed. He arrived with no press notice, au fanfare, just quiet footsteps and familiar faces. Across the world, in Los Angeles, Prince Harry announced a new mental health initiative in Diana's name, the Light Project. It aimed to fund community-based trauma programs for at-risk youth. Donations to Diana-linked causes tripled in 72 hours. Charity pages crashed from high traffic. A 30-second video of Diana's Angola landmine walk was reposted over 25 million times. And then came the headline that shook royal watchers again. Brothers may plan joint memorial for 2027, the 30-year mark. Sources hinted that preliminary talks had already begun, not between their teams, but between the brothers themselves. The memorial would be global, symbolic, and raw. It would belong to no crown, no protocol, only her. For the first time in decades, Diana's presence was not a shadow. It was a beacon. And then, in a rare moment of emotional vulnerability, William was overheard speaking to a staff member at Centrepoint. "We speak for her now," he said. "Together, finally." It was never about the throne. Not this time. It was about a mother's voice, long silenced. A grief long buried. A bond, long broken. Now restored. And through it all, the question that had once haunted the monarchy was now being answered in real time. Can legacy heal what silence once shattered? Diana's legacy was not just back. It was alive, louder than ever, and reshaping the future of the monarchy. This was no longer just about two princes. It was about the woman who made them human, and the world that finally chose to listen. Their reunion stirred hope, but William's unexpected words revealed wounds still bleeding beneath the surface. As Harry stood stunned and Charles remained silent, the royal family's fragile peace shattered once again. Was this the beginning of real healing, or the end of pretending? In the House of Windsor, nothing stays buried for long.